Another great episode of From this week, and this episode has a very raw feel to it. And one of the big themes of this episode is the fact that we don't really have a survival situation in this episode. And it's really about what happens when things go quiet, and what happens when your mind is reflecting on the past and also trying to solve the mysteries at hand, because they don't have to fight for their lives in this episode. But in this first scene here, is also reflecting that, and also reflecting the other big theme of the episode, which is that everybody has their role. The ghost of Tom later in the episode says, "A man does what a man does." And it sounds like a throwaway line, but it's really not, because in this first scene here, Tabitha and Jim, because they're reflecting on the past, they are starting to go back into their old habits and what led them to the place where they were going to get divorced to begin with. So Tabitha, as a result of last week's episode where we had the big meeting and everybody feels like she failed them because she didn't get any answers while she was out there, she's starting to ruminate on these things. And like I said in last week's breakdown video, I feel like she agreed with them because she didn't get to complete her mission. She did feel like a failure at the end of the day, and she wants her feelings validated, and she wants Jim to understand where she's coming from. And instead, Jim is just trying to comfort her and make her feel better. And Jim says in this scene that you want me to read your mind and tell you exactly what you want to hear. And that's actually him projecting what he believes his role is in this scene, and she's trying to get him to go a level deeper and say, no, I want you on my side. I want you to understand me. So really, he's actually just imposing upon her what he feels he should do in the scene, and she's rejecting that. So, and then we're going back into what started the divorce in the first place, and the fact that the death of their son put a wedge between them. Jim retreated into his work, and Tabitha was left with the kids. And then he brings up that she left and all of the things that they went through this season. And it really just ends in a very uneasy way. And then we have the kids dealing with that right after. So we have Julie here, and she has the biggest burn of the episode where she says, all of a sudden things are getting back to normal. So that was just a great moment there. And then you see Ethan dealing with that situation later on in the episode as well, where clearly that has a ripple effect. Now that things are quiet, they're going back to how things used to be when this desperate situation actually drew them together. So again, we're dealing with that theme of danger and survival, pushing aside these more petty issues to deal with the more immediate circumstance, but now things are quiet. That's when they start to crop up again. And here we have Jade. His role this season is to be the guy who's trying to see patterns. He wants to believe that everything is there for a purpose, and he's trying to use his more scientific mind to figure this thing out. And I love this scene here with Boyd, who is more practical, realist type of guy. He's not seeing it. He just sees it's just a bunch of random stuff. He doesn't really have a deep connection to it, whereas Jade sees a puzzle. And I love that they have their different roles. And this is when Boyd reveals the second bottle tree. And I was wondering when we were going to get to this. So he's adding to the puzzle, even though Boyd does not really have anything to contribute to this puzzle solving. He does have the knowledge of the other tree. So there is a purpose to everything. There is a design to everything, feeding into Jade's concept here. So now we got a big part of the episode is between Victor and Henry, and they have a mission this episode to get Jasper, what we put off last week. Now they're going together because Henry refuses to let Victor go on his own. So this scene starts with Henry admiring this toy, and it's again just kind of a bookend on the fact that what they end with at the end of this storyline in this episode is finding Jasper and saying it's just a toy. Henry says it's just a toy at the end. And here at the beginning, it's actually kind of a reversal of that, because he's looking at this car thing and he's like, this is a toy to him. It's nothing but a toy. It symbolizes childhood, something that he looks back on fondly because in the absence of Victor in his life, he looks back on that as the blissful time, even though we know, based on what he said to Tabitha in earlier scenes this season, that there was maybe some cracks in the relationship with his children before, that he was uneasy about how he left things when they disappeared. So he's still cherishing childhood as this like dream that he wants to get back to, this thing that he's always had this hope might come back to him. And of course, it's rusted up. It's a symbol of how Victor's gotten a lot older. He's not the innocent person that he once was, even though he has some of that state of mind. That's how Henry's looking at it. He's happy to see it. It's kind of like his escape in this scene. And then Victor comes in and says, no, this thing has a history, and it actually represents death because it was a woman's toy, and it represented to her dying son. So to Henry, it's like this positive thing, and it's like this thing that he treasures, and to Victor, it's a sorrowful memory, a reminder of the loss of innocence, the death, and all the things he's been surrounded by while he's been here. So I think it's a simple thing, but it's a powerful image. So here we get Kenny helping out Marielle get things out of the ambulance, and his role in this episode is just a sense of unease. He doesn't know where he's supposed to be because his parents are gone now. He needs to find a new place to fit in. He's not going to fit in here at the clinic because he and Christy used to have a romantic relationship. Marielle's getting in the way of that. It's not malicious here. She's definitely trying to be gracious about it, but she's like, I got this. You need to find somewhere else to be. And I think that it's just kind of her gentle way of saying, you know, this isn't the place for you. And here in this scene, Kenny's dealing with that. He doesn't want to talk about it. He's a little angry, but I think even he knows him and Christy really probably shouldn't spend extended periods together, and that he needs to find somewhere else to be, and he doesn't know where that is. But he does have an answer later in the episode. Here we have Boyd dealing with the guilt of the Randall situation, and he's just coming in to check up on him. And this is Boyd's thing this episode. Notice Boyd doesn't really have a specific mission here. When things got quiet for him, his mind went straight to the guilt he has over what he did to Randall. So that's why he ends up here. So again, it's just that theme, things quieting down, all the things that he did wrong bubbling up in his mind. So that's a big symbol here. And then he gets a quest from Christy, which is that they found a portable ultrasound machine in the ambulance, which again, it's like the place having this supernatural intelligence and bringing them exactly what they need at any given point. So the place knows it has this knowledge they need to find out what's going on with Fatima's baby, so they bring them an ultrasound machine, and it's definitely like this purposeful thing, like there is this big design behind everything. And here we have a heartbreaking scene where Fatima just is scared, and it's one of those things where you just don't want to face what the big problem is. You just want everything to be okay, and you really feel for her in this scene. So Elias says they need to bring somebody in. They can't do this alone, and then Boyd shows up right then. And here we have Donna. She, all this season, has kind of been breaking down, and she really took it hard when Dale had the terrible thing happen to him. She's been losing hope and losing purpose. So she, in this scene, when things are getting quiet again, she wants to do something to remember Dale by. And it's almost more like there's this crack forming within her, the crack in the pool, and she's trying to cover it up and build walls. It's a symbolic thing that she's doing by bringing these rocks over here, bringing it up, almost trying to hide the thing that really disturbed her before. It's kind of how she's always done things, which is more just hide from her feelings. But in this case, you do get to see some of that healing when she has some catharsis. And Tabitha comes here to kind of have the conversation she really wanted to have with Jim earlier in the episode. And here we have Donna saying you should count yourself really lucky you got here back with your kids. Now here Randall is talking to Marielle. Here on the surface with Randall and Marielle, it's about him dealing with his new situation. He wants to look at the scars. He doesn't really want to face it. He doesn't want to take the band-aids off. He doesn't want Marielle to look at him. He wants to do it all himself. But really, it's just his way of guarding himself. He's always had these walls up to protect himself from other people. He has this standoffish attitude towards everybody. That's exactly how he deals with the fact that he's a changed man. And it doesn't even look to me like he's directly looking at it. He's almost like looking to the side and like just peeking out of the periphery of his vision to see the scars. That's what it looks like to me anyways. And he's like shaking. I can't tell if it's anger or what exactly that emotion is. And then we have Kenny here with Julie, and Kenny's talking about trying to find a screwdriver. And then this is just Kenny realizing he doesn't have a place here anymore. His stuff is getting moved around, and there isn't any sort of presence of him or his family other than these memorials. And he looks at these memorials and just fully realizes he needs somewhere new to go. So here down in the caves, we are retracing their steps from last season. And now we're off to find out more about the baby. And this is another scene where my blood's getting pumping. I'm like, what are we going to find out? And then we have Elgin with the camera. He's building a collage. And I knew something was going to be wrong with that photo. So he's seeing this ghost, this vision of this kimono wearing lady. And we see that again in the episode. And here we're with Jade, and he has another hallucination of Tom, who we talked to last season. And Tom is talking about how every man has his role. That's why he's just polishing the glass, because his role in the town was a bartender, even though he had a different role out in the real world where he was, I believe, a philosophy professor. But in this world, he was the bartender, and that was his role, was to be a place of comfort for people. And Jade is somebody who indulged a lot, and they even talk about how he's looking for answers literally in bottles. So there's an irony to that. But really, it's just doubt. Tom in this scene represents doubt, and Jade is like, no, everything has a pattern, everything makes sense. And Tom is saying maybe everything is actually random. So kind of the perspective of somebody like Julie or Ethan in this scene. They're talking about how it's just random and it's not meaningful after all. Jade sees it as a grand design. Tom says maybe it's just somebody trying to figure things out, because that's what art is, really. And this bottle tree was represented in the real world where Tabitha was going. It was an art piece. And these visions that people have are put into artwork by various characters. And it's just a way of trying to seek understanding. And that's what art is in general. So you could say that about this show that we're watching right now. It's just somebody trying to make sense out of life and see patterns. And this is the reflection of that. But Jade is like scientifically minded. No, there is a purpose behind it. There is a design, because he is a designer. And I like the end of this scene where he maybe needs to get more in touch with his roots, because that man who started the company, when everybody told him no, needs to come back. And I think it's more about him not giving in to doubt. So he just needs to be sure of himself and have that vision to go ahead. So it's actually, I think, the effect of seeing Tom and having this conversation is doubling down on what he was doing before, being more sure of himself than he was at the beginning. So I think that that's really Tom's purpose in this. It's really kind of similar to how Boyd has these conversations with Father Cautry. And Father Cautry is, in those scenes, also pushing back on Boyd a little bit, but also trying to be a comfort as well. So these visions seem to have the reinforcing factor where just by asking questions, they almost lead them further down the path that they're already going on. So again, it's that idea, every man has his role, and Jade's role is to seek these solutions out. And here we have a scene with Ethan talking about how everything was better back when there was chaos and people didn't have time to be mad at each other. And then we see the kids again, another creepy vision of the kids on Kui. And I almost just feel like that's like a reminder that these kids are still out there. So I don't know that there's a greater significance to the kids in this scene right here, other than the fact that they are upstairs when the family seems to be almost like falling apart. The kids have now invaded the house. So before they were outside, she saw them mostly they were on the porch, and then she saw them in the woods, and all of that, they saw them in the tunnels. Now they've invaded the house, and they're upstairs as well. So the upstairs of the house is almost like the brain. So I don't know if there's more symbolism to it than that. But here we have Kenny asking to be a member of Colony House because he's seeking a new place. And I really like the line about the sex parties. It's funny, kind of bringing back how it was in season 1, where the Colony House was a lot more chaotic and Fatima was hooking up with multiple people and stuff. So just kind of tying that in, because we haven't really seen that element in the story as much lately. So just reminding us of that, I think, is good, and it's a funny line in this scene as well. Now we're learning more about the bottle trees, and the new tree has the same numbers as the old tree with some subtle differences. Like one of the trees is all in cursive, and there are some numbers that are written backwards, as Ethan points out later in the scene. And I think it's important that Ethan is here, because Ethan has had a very realist perspective in this season overall, where he's pushing back on Boyd's hope. Like, you don't know. He's pushing doubt, and he's being very grounded. Whereas the adults have these ideas in their heads of how things should be. Ethan's just kind of absorbing his situation around him. And children have this purity to them, where they don't go into things with as many preconceived notions. So whereas Jade has all of this education, and he has all of these expectations, and he has these ideas that things need to fit together, he might be blind to certain things that a child wouldn't be. The simplicity of just looking at it as it is, whereas Jade is trying to see through the trees. So he's almost trying to think 2 steps ahead, and he's missing what's right in front of him, like the backwards numbers. So I think it's really smart to have Ethan in those scenes. I think Ethan's going to be pretty important to solving that problem there. Now we have Randall and Marielle talking about the situation last season with the place that they went, where their eyes were glazed up and they were in a coma, except they were somewhere else. And Marielle's trying to pretend that nothing really happened, and Randall's still dealing with that. It's an opportunity for Randall to seek acceptance as well. So he's really just trying to find his feelings validated in much the same way Tabitha was in the opening scene. But instead of them ending up arguing, Marielle shows him compassion because they did go through that same experience together, and she understands it. And he talks about how the bus, seeing all the creatures all around, he can't forget what's happening around outside. So here she invites him in. So it's just about acceptance. That's one of the big themes of this episode. Kenny's looking for it. That's all any of us really want, is to be accepted and understood, and Randall is illustrating that perfectly here. And here we have a scene delving deep into the caves further than we've ever been, and I thought somebody was going to die here, because we have Henry talking about how we shouldn't go in there, and usually that's something somebody says in a show like this before they die and get absolutely destroyed by the creatures or something like that. And they even have a slippery slope going out of this cave. I thought somebody was going to fall when they showed us a rock falling over. I was for sure that Henry's going to die, just so we have Victor regretting his life choices. But that's not what ends up happening. So they go into this cave, they find Jasper, and the surprise that we get is that there's also an article of clothing that was Victor's mother's. I don't know what the significance of that will be, but I'm sure it'll lead to something. The creatures are creepy here. And the implication here is that the creatures have let this happen. Obviously, this is their domain. Supposedly, this is where they sleep during the daytime, and yet we haven't really run into them as much as you would expect. This scene, she's saying, if you keep coming down here, we're not going to let you go out. So that's almost to me implying they let this happen. It's just like how in the first episode of the season, we had the situation with the barn. It's the situation outside of the ambulance. These creatures are smarter than they're letting on. It's not an accident that all these things happen. Now, it makes me feel like there's something sinister with this doll Jasper. Maybe Jasper's not actually going to be the solution that Victor thought. And here we have Victor and Henry in Victor's kind of hideaway we were at last season. And here they have the toy and they're kind of calming down, and Victor says that this is where he went when things got too loud, and Henry realizes how alone Victor was, and again, it's just like seeking acceptance and needing to be with other people, and Henry's realizing Victor didn't have that, and Henry didn't really have that either, if you think about it. And here's the moment where Henry says it's just a toy. So that's the cliffhanger with this part of the episode. We'll find out what happens there. And here we have the ultrasound scene with Fatima, and my heart was pounding in this scene. What were we gonna find? Is gonna be a monster in there? Were we gonna have a chest burster situation like the Alien movies? What was gonna happen? And it turns out there's nothing in there. But there's just no way that this whole situation happened and it's not going to lead to something. So what is that? There is something inside her, according to Fatima. Now this is juxtaposed with the immediate scene here with Elgin, and Elgin took a photo of Fatima with the camera. And in the photo, he sees the kimono lady, and then she appears right next to him and says, "I know the answers. We're going to fix everything. I can save everyone." And that, to me, the fact that she is in that photo with Fatima, the fact that this is happening in the scene directly after the scene we just had with the ultrasound, I think that there is now a connection between Fatima and this entity, this kimono-wearing lady. We get it in that photo. It's not just random. It's not just an accident. There is something to it. I don't know if that means that this entity has attached itself to Fatima in some way. I don't know what it means, but that's my theory, is that there is a connection between this lady and Fatima. There's got to be. There's no way that that photo is meaningless. I guess you could call me Jade in this situation, trying to find connections, but that's what I do. That's what I'm here for, trying to find these patterns, okay? That's what I do on this channel. Here we have a scene where Jade is talking to Tabitha about the kind of voodoo doll things. I called them scarecrows when we saw them before. These things that are outside of the lake where the food is, and they seem to be keeping the monsters away. She recognizes them from a dream. We have the 3 red rocks. She recognizes them. So earlier this season, we had Tabitha realizing that she and Victor's mother have too much in common for things to make sense. And Victor's mother is making these paintings. They're both seeing the children, the Akui children, and also they had the same like bracelet. So it's almost like they're the same person or something. And now Tabitha has an extra special connection to this place, the dream that she had as a child, the nightmare. And she started out the episode talking about having a nightmare. Again, it's another bookend. At the beginning of the episode and at the end of the episode, she says, "I had a nightmare. That was why she was awake." And then we find out at the end it's maybe the same nightmare that she had at the beginning of the episode is the one that we now have this revelation that she has this connection to the place also. Jade was talking about in the episode that one of the reasons the bottle tree is so significant is that Victor's mother was the only one who had a connection to the place before they got there. This just pokes a massive hole in his theory there. Maybe they all have connections to this place before they got here. Maybe this was something that is just a product of their collective unconscious or something like that. So I do appreciate Jade having theories about like quantum entanglement, about wormholes, about dimensions, but really I think this is more the realm of dreams and the mind than it is the realm of science. I think it has more to do with like psychology and collective unconscious thought and myths and stories and visions. I think it's more to do with that than any practical real world application that he's trying to apply to it. You know, that's my theory about it anyways. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Was there anything I missed? Definitely let me know your theories, and hope to see you guys in the next video. Definitely sub if you want to see more From content as well as other TV shows, because I just can't wait to break into more this season. I can't believe we're already 6 episodes in. So let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching, everybody. Peace out.